my name is Molly Dorshimer, and I'm a senior in the college studying science, technology, and society. For the past year, I've been doing research with Dr. Lara Roman at the U.S. Forest Service Philadelphia Field Station. Her research is into the history of street trees in Philadelphia, and I've been helping her research who are the actors in the history of street trees and look into the certain species of London plane trees and why they're so prevalent in our city. Laura is a research ecologist, but wanted to do this historical project because she's found that in her research into trees and tree coverage in modern Philadelphia that the way that trees are arranged in the areas of the city that are covered by greenery has really deep roots in the history of our city and the people who were making decisions and had influence in the past about 120 years. So I've helped her dig into historical archives and newspapers to figure out these questions and why the London plane is so prevalent. So you may think, why are you studying street trees? That seems pretty irrelevant. But actually, it's really important. If you look at the greenery coverage of Philadelphia today, there are significantly less trees and parks and green areas in places where people of lower socioeconomic statuses live and people of color live. And so looking into the history can help us understand why that's the case and can inform the decisions of people going forward. It also gives us insight into why there are so many trees of certain variety. So, for example, the American elm tree was very popular in the beginning of the 1900s and then was largely wiped out due to Dutch elm disease. And so we see less American elms, and that could also be a reason for the introduction of more plane trees. Also, looking into the history informs the governance, the people who have controlled street trees has changed hands many times in the history of not only Philadelphia but across the country, and it's kind of still this murky thing about who has the control to plant them, who is responsible for trimming them or removing them at a request of an owner, and so that's what we're looking into. And trees are also really important for clean air and beauty of a city, and so one example of that is there are 6 London plane trees in front of the Palestra here at Penn, and those trees, when the area in front of the Palestra was being renovated a few years ago, were almost removed because the construction needed to happen there. But it was actually found by someone doing research at Penn that they provided clean so much of the air compared to other trees at Penn because they're so large and so old that removing them would have a really negative effect on some of Penn's attempts to be greener. And so they were left there, and they're still there. You can see them. Plane trees have a very distinctive bark, and so it's splotchy and white, and so you can see it if you walk by there. So what are we researching? There are 3 different aspects that Dr. Roman is looking into, and the first one is, why are plane trees so prevalent? I've already talked about that a bunch, but if you look around the city, you can see their distinctive bark. Most of them are along streets and are pretty old. You can tell by the size of their trunks and their deep roots, and a lot of them line streets as opposed to being in people's front yards or that kind of thing in parks. And so we're looking into why are they so prevalent. Then we're trying to figure out how they're governed and what the history of that governance is. As I said, that's really important. And then the third thing is, what role do women play in the history of implementing green infrastructure in the city? I do less of this. One of Lara's other interns does more, but we found that our very own Ellen Harrison, who was the wife of one of Penn's past presidents, has actually had a crucial role in deciding a lot of the green space in the city. And so women played a really important role, and so we're looking into that too. One of the reasons that we think plane trees are so prevalent is because They are very sturdy trees, and being on the side of the street is not great conditions for a tree, and so they are able to withstand them and do better than some of the other varieties. In addition, they are aesthetically pleasing. They have really nice tree and leaf amounts per tree, and they grow to a nice height that's not too tall but not too short. So these are some of the reasons we think that they're really prevalent here. And they were not as susceptible to diseases like Dutch elm disease or these caterpillars that were really prevalent in the early 1900s that were just eating away at trees. We also know that the London plane tree is a hybrid, so it is a mix of two trees from Europe, and they became a hybrid over in Europe and then made their way to the United States. And so there are a lot of really influential people in agriculture and like nurseries of trees and that kind of thing who came to the U.S. and at this time and probably brought that tree with them and influenced its popularity not only in Philadelphia but in the northeastern United States as a whole. And so those are some of the reasons we think that the plane tree is so popular. Now to the second part, which is who governs them. Through the newspapers I've been sifting through from 1867 to around the 1950s, we found that before 1912, street trees are very much the property of the owner of that land. So if you owned a house and it had land on a street and there were trees there, it was your responsibility to plant them and take care of them and decide what happened with them. And then we see in 1912 that after many resolutions put before the city government, the trees were put under the care of the Fairmount Park Commission. There's a street tree department and they were put under that care. And so that was from then on, they were controlled by the Fairmount Park Commission. But another really crucial player in this was the City Parks Association. The CPA was an organization of people who were interested in seeing more parks around the city, but around about 1900 to 1925, 1930, they were very influential in not just the green spaces in Philadelphia, but all of the kind of layout and arrangement of the city until a department in the city government was made to handle those things. And so they were an advocate for street trees, and they influenced sometimes what was planted and what worked there. And I already touched on women. That's another part of the project. We see that Ellen Harrison was very involved in that, and civic clubs, and even within the City Parks Association, there were women very early on who were making influential decisions about the green spaces in our city. So those are the three things we're looking at. The project's ongoing and we're still figuring things out and looking through old archives of City Parks Association records and Fairmount Park Commission records, old newspapers, but we'll be finishing the project soon and hopefully get to the bottom of it. So special thanks to Dr. Roman and the other interns at the US Forest Service and for letting us use their pictures and for including me in the project. Thanks for listening to my event talk.